All right, welcome everybody to another expert interview. We are still in Nampa, Idaho at Prefab Logic, sitting here with Doug Pill. We are going to show you some things today that you just have not seen in our industry in a long, long while. We've seen it in big production, I guess the big skyscrapers, people are using some of this, but never used in the way that it is being used here at Prefab Logic for modular construction 2.0. It's going to be a lot of fun. Doug, thanks so much for joining us today.
Dave, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. So we had you on the show once before, a couple of months back, and we kind of talked about what Prefab Logic was doing. And you guys said, well, we're working on some really cool stuff, augmented reality, virtual walkthroughs, augmented walkthroughs. And you're going to show us programs that break down a building into hundreds of thousands of parts and pieces. And allows us to be more precise, more accurate, and I guess really DFMA, walk all the way from the inception of a job through the construction, yeah?
Correct, yeah, by all means. Our scope we're going to talk today is really centric to three clients. One is the development client. We'll review part of the scope and the work product that we produce for them, transitioning that, leveraging that work product into the manufacturing environment.
Yeah.
We'll view the augmented reality, the virtual reality components there, and then extend that into a newly released product that we've developed in conjunction with some general contractors, and that's the on-site completion component.
Right. It's going to be an amazing journey. Have your phones ready because you're going to actually be able to use your picture taker on your phone. Is that what they call it? Picture taker? The picture taker on the phone to scan some QR codes so you can get a feel of what this does. That's right, you heard me. Have your phone cameras ready as we walk through this presentation. But first, Doug, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Why are we live on Twitch, Doug?
That's where the cool kids are at.
That is where the cool kids are at. This is where the young generation, they have been building games. They have been living in VR and AR worlds a lot longer than we have been doing it in our industry. In fact, the gaming back end of some of this is one of the largest back end gaming softwares that's out there, yeah?
Yeah, very much so. We'll discuss and talk about Unity today and a little bit why we chose Unity. But to your point, it is the world's largest gaming platform.
Right.
And in collaboration with Unity as a stakeholder in the development of this technology has been quite a journey.
I love it. I love it. So there you have it, everybody. At Dave Cooper Live, we are bringing you the people and the processes that are doing it better and building it better. Our guests and topics include experts in building systems, building science, building codes, and the tech used to build it better. We are always seeking out the best and the brightest in construction and discovering all of the ways that innovative buildings come to life. And today is going to be no different. So, Doug, why don't we hop into this? We have about a 45-minute show lined up ahead of us. We're going to have to move quick because there is so much info to share. And we will put up there how to get a hold of you and how to get a hold of the product and all the other stuff, demos that you want. So let's jump into it. And we're going to use several camera views today as well. Here we are, modular construction 2.0, optimization, education, collaboration. Take us.
So Dave, before we dive into talking about iteration 2.0 of modular construction today, I think it's important to gain an understanding for our audience about how this is created and how it's able to be created. If we look at the screen right now, that is an image of one building. That project's actually under construction right now for one of our manufacturing partners, one of our development clients. That happens to be the MEPF integration for that one building. And just as a note, there are a little over 144,000 individual components that have been coordinated, collaborated, and modeled in this particular situation to an LOD 500 within this one building. It kind of gives you a perspective of how much intelligence, how much data can be produced and developed and extracted out of that building.
144,000 parts and pieces, and this has nothing to do with the structural components of a building.
Yeah,
that's how many pieces there are.
Yeah, that is stands structural for sure. That is MEPF only.
So with MEPF, and we wonder why there's change orders on these big jobs, right? When I really think about how complex and how complicated a project really is, this is a visual proof of how detailed it is.
So before we dive in, I think it would be prudent to spend just a moment to explain to our audience of of how this is we create the ability for this to be developed. And it's really, our first bullet point there is it's process driven, right? If you think about the iterations that we're going to go through today, this really started with disruption about 2.5 years ago when we began creating what we now define as our sprint model. Today we operate within 3 different sprint models depending on what we're developing and who we're developing it for. But that is a process driven approach for the development client, the manufacturing partner, and today the general contractor. And it defines who has responsibilities to do what, when they're responsible to get that accomplished, and so that we stay on task. The only way that we can create the level of development that we do today within the shortened period of time that we do is that people are on task and we're able to produce that. The value out of that, which we'll see here as we go through our time together today, is we can actually begin to extract data out of this model. So that supports and helps the architect, the developer, the manufacturer, anybody that's going to be engaged in this from procurement through on-site completion. Those literally millions of points of data are viable and important.
That basically you can give to your supplier. It gives them exact numbers, exact sizes, exact dimensions of every piece and part that you need in this, which makes you highly efficient and highly accurate when it comes to purchase orders and everything else.
By all means, right? Yeah. And so if we think about this in iteration, it's the process that it goes through. It's the level of development that has been designed and coordinated and integrated within the model itself. And that allows us to not only extract the data, but also produce the visualization resources and the tools that can be used anywhere in the world on a project.
By anybody.
By anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
So as we progress forward in here, as we've mentioned, Dave, we have three key clients and a many number of stakeholders that are involved in our projects. And we're going to begin, like the sprint model is progressive and iterative, our client progression in this presentation is as well, because we're going to talk today about our development clients, our manufacturing partners, and our general contracting clients. Developers are first because that scope of work is collaborated, coordinated, and designed so that we can then leverage that and begin moving into manufacturing. What we can't do is start with the manufacturing component of this scope and be successful and then come back and produce the development scope. So it's progressive: development client, manufacturing, and then on-site completion for the general contractor. But before we dive in and take a look at the virtual reality model here, it's important to understand a couple of things within this model, right? It's not just about creating a model. It's creating a model that is specific, driven to the product that's being integrated. There are no placeholders. Every J-box, every stud, every piece of conduit, all lineal footage that is coordinated and collaborated into this model is spec driven. Okay, that allows us to produce a level of development model that's an as-built scenario. Out of that, we get to extract data in terms of accurate schedules, accurate materials takeoffs, and come to the point in time where we get to design intent review. For us, this is the beginning of what we call the line in the sand for the end of Sprint 1, because what we'll do is we'll collaborate, coordinate, begin to integrate this model for the client, and then roughly 45 days in from the time we kick off a project, we'll get all the stakeholders together, including structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire, the developer, the architect. This allows us an opportunity to immerse within that environment 45 days after kickoff. This is the final time that we get to make changes, because once we get to the final review of this virtual reality model, we'll then produce a very robust client approval package, which we'll see here in a moment. But as we immerse into this platform, we'll be able to begin seeing and giving the opportunity to create those changes. So as an example, this is a particular client project as well. Mm-hmm. And so everything that's modeled in here that you see, it's not just visual representation. It's actually modeled with thousands of points of data integrated into that. And so as we come through and we look at the receptacle, right? How mundane is a receptacle for an image of this particular scenario? Well, it's actually important because within our nested families, what we're doing is we're integrating the switch and as one component, we're integrating the J-box as another component. Mm-hmm. And we're also integrating that cover plate and the screw as another component, so that we can begin extracting for the manufacturer to tell them that on level 1 of this building, you're going to have 914 of those.
And how accurate is the program?
100%. Dave.
100%.
We're modeling to spec. There are no placeholders within this product. And so To your point, in terms of accuracy, right, as we look through this, this architectural VR, everything that you see here has been modeled to spec. Accuracy, when we need to make final changes, as we mentioned in here, let's say that the client wanted to move that receptacle over 4 inches. When we move that receptacle over 4 inches within that integrated model, it automatically incorporates into the virtual reality. It's real life updates.
Wow. And so visually speaking, data point driven speaking, what I'm looking at is to scale accurate
100%.
what I'm walking around. And that's a simulation on my phone, I'm suspecting.
This is actually within the VR environment.
Okay.
We'll talk about a simulation on your phone and your iPad here in a few moments in the augmented reality environment. So once we get done with the architectural VR review, again, that's the opportunity for the stakeholders to say, I want to increase the width of that base cabinet 4 inches, or I want to snap my receptacle in line with my can-like grid within my ceiling. Those are documented, the Revit model's updated, and then from there, we produce a very robust client approval package. And I think David mentioned a moment ago, if you see the QR codes that are on your screen there, take a moment, scan those with your cell phones. And that is a memorialized, forever standing visual image of what's been created in the augmented reality environment. What we did is we got to the point with a client and they said, look, not everybody has access to the virtual reality environment, but we need the ability to see this and leverage this in other places, on the job site or out in the field somewhere. And so now if you scan that, you have a finalized visualization of what that particular product's going to be looking like. Out of this, Jen and I, we were talking earlier this morning, every decision that needs to be made, every product that needs to be decided upon, every color that needs to be identified is memorialized within this client approval package. And from there, what we get to do is draw that line in the sand. The client accepts everything that has been developed thus far, and that allows us to launch into Sprint 2. Okay.
I love it. So if you're out there and you're scanning that, you should be able to be seeing virtually what's in that whole environment, which I think is absolutely amazing for anybody on the project.
For sure. And just to give you, if people didn't have a chance to scan their cell phone, this is the rendered 360 version of what's memorialized in perpetuity for this particular project. We start out in the bathroom the same way we did in the virtual reality platform. Again, keep in mind that this is a static image. This is not the virtual reality. So all of these are just fixed fixtures. There's no data behind this. But it's a great solution, a great resource to be able to go back into that particular project and look at this particular dwelling unit, whether it's a manager's kitchen, a community kitchen, a dwelling unit, right? This is modeled to the point that as you saw, you can see the logos and read the numbers on the side of the refrigerator.
So how, for somebody that is the owner of the project, the developer, the banker, whoever's building this, the investment person, how valuable is this for the relationship between the manufacturer and the customer and the end product?
Well, I tell you what we have learned in this is we spent time recently with a client that does their core business is tax credit funded projects. Okay. Right? And assets that are created like this allow them to validate what's being done with it at the lender level. Right, they get to leverage this and show them this is what's going to be built. This is what the product's going to look like, and it's just one more thing in that direction towards validating us as an industry. For sure. Yeah, by all means. So as we talk about this render 360, again, this is a static image. In terms of there's no data behind it, but it lives in perpetuity. It defines the clear design intent for everything that was done. It's that permanent reference. These are modeled to LOD 400 and 500 components. It does define the as-built condition, and it's the complete design review. It wraps it up as a whole.
Doug, can you explain what LOD means to some of the consumers that may not understand that?
You bet. Level of development. Level of development is not just how accurate and how real that image looks. When you historically, we would be modeling as an industry in the construction industry as a whole to an LOD 300 potentially, right? And that gives us a visualization that allows us to begin to understand what we're looking at. But beyond that, when we start getting into 400 and 500, it actually allows for data to be integrated into that component. We talked about the receptacle, the switch, the J box. We actually get to start attaching data to that. So manufacturer of that particular product, the size, the dimension of that particular product. And what that allows us to do as we progress into the Navisworks platform here momentarily, is that allows us to also identify feasibility, constructability within the digital twin, because our mission is to create a 100% accurate, to your point a moment ago, digital twin long before it goes into that manufacturing environment. When we're modeling to an LOD 400, in many cases for our manufacturing partners 500, we actually get to determine constructability and feasibility within the digital environment.
How many points of data have you ever really looked at? Like you have a big project right now. How many points of data is involved all the way through a project?
Millions.
And so with millions and millions, and it's the same on even a single family home has a million moving pieces, right, or parts to it. This is why there's change orders on sites. This is because, I mean, it's too hard to physically, humanly figure it out on paper, yes?
Well, I
mean, millions. How can one person do that, or even 20?
History has shown us that it doesn't happen.
Right.
And that's why we have change orders. In fact, part of the challenge for our industry historically has been because we didn't have a data-driven process to follow to produce predictable outcomes for manufacturers and GCs when it falls on site. Here's what happened, right? We had terrible procurement practices and efficiencies.
That's right.
The procurement departments at our manufacturing partners, they would be guessing, they would be forecasting, if you will, rather than making buying decisions on accurate data. We all know today that as an industry, set aside the struggles we're feeling on the materials supply chain side today, think about what we've gone through in the last 10 years. When we're able to provide accurate data to our manufacturing partners, that only optimizes procurement. When procurement's optimized, the materials are there, the right materials when they need them, it makes the manufacturing environment that much more efficient. Yeah, for sure. So now moving in, speaking of our manufacturing client. So again, what we're doing is we're taking all of that data, that integrated model that we've done on the architectural side for the development client, that allows us to begin producing that model integration to a very high level of collaboration and coordination. This is built within the Revit environment. We're a full Revit full Revit shop. So once that's developed and coordinated and collaborated, we begin putting that into the Navisworks platform, which we'll talk about Navisworks here in a moment. From that, we begin producing the documentation. Some of our manufacturing partners accept their documentation in the form of shot drawings and a PDF set. Some actually accept those in a digital format, electronic format. And then from there, we go into the augmented realities, the virtual realities, and then into manufacturing. So just as the virtual reality was developed for the development client to make sound decisions and define everything that was going to be done, the virtual reality was developed for our manufacturing partners for a completely different reason, right? Historically, we burden the folks down on the production floor or out on the production floor with educating them on what's going to be built the day we hand them a shop drawing.
Right.
George, Sally, Bill, here's what you're going to be building today. Historically, because of lack of process, oftentimes they're getting that shop drawing maybe after that's going into production. We've all seen it happen, right?
Yeah.
No one wants to admit it, but it happens. Okay, so with our process and our predictable outcome methodology, what we can do is actually deliver those shop drawings 30 days in advance prior to that going online. But even further upstream from that, we're giving those folks, not just the production manager, not just the supervisors, but the folks that are actually going to be building this, an immersive opportunity to view the product and collaborate on the product months and months and months before it ever goes into production. They're the folks that know how to do it better than you and I.
So let me ask you this before you go to that. So in real time, several people can be working on the same project in the same file without, how typically it's done in a lot of the manufacturing facilities. You got a file, an update could happen, and files just keep being pushed back and forth. And what you've done here is everything is collaborative environment. So you're always working with the latest and greatest document.
Correct. by all means. Everything's hosted through our BIM 360. And then, it's collaborated systematically, not just from an integration standpoint, but also a constructability and a feasibility. And then we talked about Navisworks a moment ago. That's iterative, right? You don't just integrate Navisworks before or during or after. It's a constant. As that model continues to develop and grow, we need to ensure constructability. Right? We never want to release something in the manufacturing environment to where they have to ask questions.
And Navisworks is what? Explain that to the customer.
Give me just a moment, we'll get there.
There you go. Go for it.
So as I mentioned, what we'll do here is, just as we did on the architectural side, we'll give the folks that are going to be building this the opportunity to fly through this and ask questions. And as we talked about how data-driven this process is, if we take a look at this is level 1, right? We're flying above the modules for a particular project. And so every component that's been modeled here, I'm going to say it again, it's taken into consideration with the DFMA methodology, designed for manufacturing and assembly. And ultimately, every one of these components has data behind it. So one of our manufacturing partners happens to operate with an automated saw platform. You may have seen that here recently, right? So if we look at the top of this, every one of those ceiling joists that have holes and dados in them, right, that has to be modeled within that component, so it tells the automated saw where and when to cut, right? So from there, what we'll do is we'll fly them through. This is an immersive process, guys. This is a 2 to 4 hour process, depending on the project we're going through. Looking at the corridors here, double loaded corridor product. Now we're headed down. This particular client recently had a question on the stairs, how the stairs would integrate. And so we'd spent some time and recorded that video. We just happened to immerse it into this, of how those stairs are going to integrate. And we'll come back, we'll look at some fire suppression that'll be installed. And then we'll end up in the end wall of a dwelling unit, looking back here momentarily.
So all the parts, kits, pieces, wood, everything is cut by machine to precise accuracy. And how does it all get labeled to be put together? Are you going to show us that later?
No, that's actually on the manufacturing side. Not every one of our manufacturing partners is automated, but the same methodology applies to them because they know exactly what needs to be produced, whether it be an automated environment or a manual labor environment. They know exactly what needs to be produced to be effective and efficient.
Love it.
Okay. But we talked about earlier about this producing the as-built conditions. We talked extensively about our nested families and why that's important. This ultimately is a design review for the manufacturer months and months in advance. And the objective, the output of this is ultimately a better product, more efficient product, and a more efficient process so that every stakeholder up to this point has a better modular experience.
Right.
So now you asked the question about Navisworks, right? And folks from our audience today surely have heard of Navisworks, and some of them may have heard good things about it, some of them may have heard bad things about it. But the truth is, my friends, Navisworks is a tool. It only produces a result based on what you put into it, right? The database methodology, good data in, good data out. And when you're modeling to an LOD 400 or 500, Navisworks does what it should do. It gives us not only clash coordination, but design review and constructability and feasibility review during this process. Clash coordination. Yep. So if you think about it as this model begins to grow and we start integrating structural, right? And then we begin to add in our fire suppression into that model. We begin to add in our mechanical, electrical, plumbing into that model. Navisworks, based on the integration that we've completed and developed thus far, will actually tell us if this is constructible, if this is going to work. Will a fire suppression line hit a mechanical line? So, in layman's terms, because we've all been in the building industry for a long time, how often has the plumber or the electrician or the mechanical contractors come and say it doesn't work? There's a beam in my way. There's wires in my way. What you're saying is this thinks that process all the way through, and in 3D virtual reality, you can visually see exactly where it's going to fit, and it's 100% accurate. 100% accurate. Yes. Wow. That's cool. Because, and I rely on that 100% accuracy, because we're modeling to the level that we do that not only defines clash detection, it's actually constructability. because our J-box is not just modeled within a face of that dimension.
Yeah.
It's a three-dimensional component that tells us that it's 1 7/8 deep, it's 2 9/16 tall,
Okay.
and within this area right here, it works. It also allows us something that is really important to take into consideration is code compliance for feasibility. So as an example, if we would go back and rely upon that receptacle switch,
Yeah.
right? Code tells us that so many feet within a building is going to require another receptacle on a wall, right?
Right.
And so that the feasibility and constructability of that, if it tells us that we need another receptacle 9 feet, 1 1/8 inch down that wall, the first thing we're going to do is identify, can it work? And number two, do we have a stud there to attach it? If we don't, we have to go back and put a stud in.
To attach
That
it.
all happens months and months before it goes to the manufacturing environment. Okay? I'm going to say this as well. Risk mitigation for this process also applies to risk mitigation for everybody upstream. The developer, when we mitigate risk for the manufacturing partner, that also mitigates risk for the development client, because we're producing predictable outcomes so that everybody can have a good modular experience. Let's fly through this here. So this we're walking into a Navisworks model of dwelling units. And again, historically, people view Navisworks only as clash detection. If we look at this is telling us that everything's clash detected and it works. The other thing that we get to pull out of this is its feasibility, its constructability. That in and of itself pays major dividends to everybody within this process. Real live updates when the model is integrated and updated, the Navisworks model is ran to ensure that it's constructible and it's feasible and there's no clashes.
Now, this is all layers, right? So if I didn't want to see the mechanicals, or I only wanted to see the mechanicals, or I just wanted to see the framing, is that something I can do?
You can do that within our platform that we've developed, the technology we've created. You can actually do that in the virtual reality environment, which we'll see in a moment.
Very cool.
The augmented reality environment, excuse me.
Okay.
So let's actually move right into the augmented reality environment. And I think what's most important to start with the question why. Why was augmented reality developed within our platform? And it really came down to mobility, right? We developed the virtual reality platform for our development clients and our manufacturing partners. But the feedback from our manufacturing partners was, this is great. For people sitting behind a desk.
Yeah.
This is a great resource for us to fly through and educate, but it doesn't allow for utilization in the manufacturing environment. And so what we had done is we teamed up with started creating this technology and ultimately ended up teaming up with Unity, as you mentioned earlier, the world's largest gaming platform, to develop this product so it could be used in the manufacturing environment. It improves coordination. This is integrated within our live business model, our BIM model, excuse me. The other thing that they can do within the manufacturing environment is they're leveraging this, whether it's on their cell phone or their iPad, is take live measurements.
Okay.
So if they need to understand what this measurement should be from the side of this window to the side of the casing, they can actually define that within the augmented.
So I'm in a 100,000 square foot building, whatever, 15 stories high, and we're working on it. You're saying I can pull out my phone and I can visually see what it's supposed to look like on my phone as I'm standing in the space as it's already built.
Conditions.
Yeah, love it.
Every one of our shop drawing packages today is produced with the QR code. And so if you're your QC manager and you're QCing not just plumbing, but electrical, mechanical, structural within that environment, to your point here in a moment, I'll show you can turn on layers, turn off layers. Okay. Beyond that, what you can do.
Hold on 1 second. I'm seeing some comments out there. That QR code, everybody, that you see at the bottom of the screen, take out your phone, turn on your camera, hold your phone up to it, and your phone will detect it just like you see there. Click on it. This is kind of cool stuff. In fact, maybe I can show you on this other camera. Let me switch cameras here. Can you guys see that? So what it's going to do is ask you to launch Reflect. Let me pull it up first and we'll keep talking about it. And then it's going to actually show you that walkthrough in there.
Yes.
Let me try this one more time.
It'll load.
It'll load.
It's a large file. The first time you load that file, it's going to take a minute or two. But once you come back and go back into that environment, it's going to be much more efficient.
Got it. Perfect.
So as you're loading that, let's kind of take a walk through here and reference some of the things that Dave was looking at a moment ago. So this is augmented reality that can be utilized on your cell phone, your iPad, in any environment, whether you're within that module or you're standing in the production office. It definitely improves coordination. It is integrated into our live BIM model, live measurements like we talked about, real-time updates. When there's an integration change within the model, it's automatically updated within the environment. It's a one-to-one scale. So you're standing in this environment as you're seeing it right now. This is one-to-one scale. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's real life, and the objective behind this isn't just coordination and collaboration. It's improved QC, right? One of the primary reasons that we went and selected with Unity is this is so flexible. Because within this platform, if you're on your iPad and you're in the manufacturing environment, not only can you go into the augmented reality environment through a toggle, which is right down here where it says AR, you can also toggle into the virtual reality environment. Okay. The other thing that this allows you to do, if you've got an Oculus headset as an example, you can fly through, you can literally immerse into this with the Oculus headset on.
I love it. If you guys want to try Oculus headsets, just go to a Best Buy. They have them on display there all the time. I go do the climbing with my kids, and I'll tell you what, it'll make your stomach sick. You think you're on a cliff. So that's how real it is. Let's take a moment here, Doug, as I'm loading that up. But I want to let's go to some comments and some hellos. How about we do that?
By all means.
I love it. All right, so I'm going to go in here, Jen, and do this. So we got George Ryman good morning from Phoenix, Arizona. What is happening, Mr. George? We got Peter Molinar. Greetings from Toronto, Ontario. Hey, Peter, how are you? All the way across the ocean, Andrew Wilkinson. Good evening from the UK. Man, it's evening everywhere but here, huh?
Yeah, we're not even noon here yet.
No, I know. I was telling Doug, I'm time zones are killing me right now. All right, here we go. We got Frederico Santos. Good evening from Brazil. What is happening, Frederico? Thanks for joining us from Brazil. Love that. All right, Dwayne Barney, can you zoom in on the QR code? I can't pick it up. So let's you should be able to, if you can't still get into it, Dwayne, let us know and we'll see what we can figure out. Henry Mickelberg has a question. Henry says, how do you deal with issues of having far greater LOD from the outset when the client's overall model hasn't caught up with your design?
It's a great question, and the fact is that Henry.
That's Henry, yeah.
Henry, we drive it. We drive the design. So when our process begins when a development client has a schematic design of dwelling units and a building from an architect. At that point in time, that's when Prefab Logic launches. We get under an agreement, and we design 100% of everything modular. Dwelling units, common areas, stairs, everything that was going to be built in a manufacturing environment, we drive that.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks, Henry. Appreciate the comment, question. Justin Stewart says, hi, Jennifer, Dave, Doug. I'm here in Scottsdale this morning. Hey, Justin, thanks for joining us this morning.
Justin and Andy were here last week.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, good. Well, Scottsdale's not that far. Come on back, right? All right, moving on. Dwayne has a question. How small of a project can this be used on? It looks very time consuming for a remodeling project of a kitchen. By the way, I love the virtual scope of work.
Well, thank you for your comment there, my friend. To answer your question, theoretically, it could be applied into a large number of projects. Our focus, our best optimal project really begins at about 50 modules for our clients for a number of reasons. So as a base level, that's probably where that would start, would be a 50 module project.
Perfect. And I see we have, is it Hilton Mockler in there doing some Q&A answering?
Good morning, Hilton.
Good morning. All right, moving on. Andrew Wilkinson has a question. Are all professional consultants working together with the design process or individually design each stage? Who is the overall coordinator for the design?
Love the question. And so what was his name?
That is Andrew Wilkinson from the United Kingdom.
Andrew, great question. Thank you for it. This is a 100% collaborative process. So when we kick off a project, all the stakeholders, architect, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, exterior building and maintenance, all of those stakeholders have to be under contract and on board with the client at kickoff, and it's collaborative all the way through the process.
Andrew, thanks for the question. Appreciate you. Allison Meter is joining us from Scottsdale, Arizona. Love it. All right, so if you're out there and you have questions as we continue through this presentation, please put a Q in front of your question. And also, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. We really love it when you hit that like and share button. And we really love it if you can get us to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're almost there.
Getting close.
We started late on YouTube, but we're almost there. Yeah, we're at 815. At 1,000, we get all kinds of new benefits. So please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And if you're not following what Prefab Logic is doing, and Doug Pill on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and all the other, I'm sure you guys are on all of those platforms. Please do so now. Go and follow them. All right, let's get back into it. We are jumping back into our presentation.
So this takes us into a new strategy for us within the last year, Dave, and that is modular on-site completion. As we talked about a couple of things. This is a progressive process, and it's progressive. It begins with the development client, transitions into all the assets that we've created for the developer into the manufacturer, and then to ensure a successful modular experience for our development clients, working with general contractors, we realized that we need to extend this methodology into the modular on-site completion. I mean, if you think about our mission as a company, it's very basic. It's to compress time, it's to reduce budgets of projects, and to deliver products that work to our manufacturing partners into that modular on-site integration. And this really is what we call Sprint 2.5 today. That's for the general contractor, and that's to ensure when those modules arrive on site, we take the same approach for collaboration and design and integration for this scope that we do for every scope up to this point. Okay. So out of this Sprint 2.5, there is an enormous list of deliverables, and I'm going to touch on a couple of them, then we're going to dive into the augmented reality and the virtual reality as well as Navisworks. But the print package, the deliverable that we have to provide to the GC today is far different than what we provide to the manufacturer. Their scope is different. Their completion scope is different. And so what we've done is developed a package for them that allows not only in print format, 2D and 3D drawings, it's also layered, because when those modules arrive on site, what is the first discipline that's going to go in and be completed in those modular units? Fire suppression. Right. Okay. And then the next phase is going to be mechanical, and the next phase is going to be plumbing. And so what we've done is because we're modeling and integrating at the level that we now get to extrapolate data and resources to ensure an efficient modular on-site completion. Right. So we talked about it before, same methodology. We improve coordination, live model integration, live measurements, real-time updates, right? And so if you take a look at this is a corridor for a particular project that was produced, right? This is 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, this can either be viewed in AR or VR. Out of this integration, what we get to produce is not just the visualization creation. We actually are now in a position to hand to a general contractor a complete materials takeoff by discipline, a complete materials takeoff by level, and a complete materials takeoff list by building and by project, so that they know by discipline, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire suppression, whatever it's going to be, they now know what exactly it's going to take in terms of materials to get those buildings completed. The question why is up in the right-hand corner of that slide. And guys, I'll tell you two particular scenarios. A number of years ago, we had produced a modular feasibility study for a development client, and one of our business development representatives, Lana Cook, was leading a call. And we were walking them through, the development client and the GC, as to what this entailed. And entailed, the cost of the modular components, the transportation budgets, based off a specific set of specifications. It produced the crane set and structural connection budgets. And the development client actually asked the GC, okay, here's our modular scope. What is it going to take to complete the MEPs in these quarters? What we're seeing right now, right? We're looking at this right now. And the number of $130,000 was given to the group. And someone asked to clarify that. And this happened to be a studio project, double-layered quarter studio project. So if you do the basic math, $130,000 per dwelling unit times 2 is $260,000 to complete those the MEPs in that corridor. Right. If we step back and do some basic math, and these are rough numbers, but if you think about a module coming out of a manufacturing environment a year and a half ago, it was $130,000. Right. From there, if you take transportation budget of maybe $10,000. It wouldn't be $10,000, but let's say that it was. Round up numbers. Let's make this math simple. We're now at 140, and let's say it's going to take $10,000 to crane set and structurally connected. Again, it won't, but let's round numbers and say that it does. We're $150,000 to build a module, transport that module, crane set it and structurally connected. And from the field, we're telling us that one module is going to take $260,000 to complete. That doesn't work. That is actually driving projects not to go modular, okay? Well, where we're at today is we have to create tools and resources to optimize on-site completion, okay? That's one of the major driving factors of why this was developed.
And so, I mean, this is a really, really good point, because we always say if you're comparing apples to apples up front without a solution like this in modular or for off-site, site projects tend to win every time because of the unknowns that are with offsite construction. Where does one manufacturer begin and end, and where does the trades begin and end on site? And they price it the same way they're pricing a regular job.
Correct.
And this is where the compounding factor of the manufacturer has money allotted, the GC put money allotted, then there's I don't really know how many 45-degree elbows I need, so I need to add 20% on top of that. So this eliminates all of that and allows a general contractor or a trade, mechanical, plumber, electrician, to sit down and look virtually or augmented at any of these and be able to physically say, well, yeah, I only need 10 of those, which changes the game.
It changes the game. It redefines expectations and scope.
Right.
Okay. Because if we're ever going to optimize and scale as an industry right now, people talk about that we're somewhere around 3% of starts annually. Whether that number is accurate or not is irrelevant. The truth is, if we're going to get that number to 7% and 10% and 15% and continue to scale from there, we have to take the same DFMA approach and methodology from the development client to the manufacturing environment into the modular on-site completion. Yeah, if we don't, we'll never get there.
Right. And it's technology like this that's going to help bring the younger people back into the industry as well. They've been designing and building stuff like this, like I said, long before. It's why you're using a gaming platform, or the back end of it to help build it. Are you seeing that the younger people that take a look at this when you're working with manufacturers elsewhere, that they just start drooling, or how's it working?
By all means,
yeah.
Whether it's young or old in the manufacturing environment, they're inspired by this. But I do want to point out, the fact is, this is the mission of our team. In fact, the Prefab Logic team, we have our mission as a company, but at their core, right, what creates the reason for them to put their feet on the floor every day is to create, disrupt, and develop efficiencies within the construction industry, because that's really why they come to work every day.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. All right. Let's keep going.
So we talked about Navisworks for the manufacturing environment as well. We apply that same iterative clash coordination, feasibility review process to the modular on-site completion. The level that we're designing and integrating for our manufacturing partners, we're doing the same exact thing for the modular on-site completion. At the end of the day, what this produces for us is a confident model that the mechanical subcontractor, the electrical subcontractor, the plumbing subcontractor is going to be finishing units on site, has had the opportunity to collaborate through this process.
Right.
They're handed the materials takeoff list, and they can create it and finish it much faster and much more efficiently than historical numbers show us.
Yeah. Well, listen, it makes sense. It's all there. It's laid out accurately. There's no mistake in what it's going to be. I don't know why. I was just sitting here thinking about how, when designing using a system like this, and you have a client who may not understand why something can't work, they just want it to work, right? Think about all those conversations. You can say visually, any layman can now look at it and say, I get it. There's a steel column.
This is why it works, or this is why it doesn't work.
But if you think about that back and forth that goes back in between architects, designers, engineers on a regular basis, there's a big time savings there, I would have to imagine, especially if they're all collaborating on this.
You bet. In fact, we had a general contractor in here recently, and one of the things that he got most excited about wasn't everything that was coordinated in the ceiling of this corridor, which is pretty cool in and of itself. They just wrapped up a particular project to where the chase space was an absolute chaotic mess. And when we hand them a material schedule that says, this is this pipe, this is this pipe, this is this pipe, this is your supply, this is your supply, this is exactly where it should go.
There's no.
They got pretty excited.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They got pretty excited. But Dave, that kind of gives the overall narrative for Prefab Logic's approach to the process. And I would just recap by saying that, you know, for us, it's about constant improvement. For us, it's about delivering the tools and the resources to the development clients and the stakeholders, to the manufacturing partners to be successful, to the general contractor to be successful. That's what drives our team every day. But I would also add, as much creation, as much disruption as we've generated over the last 2.5 years, we're definitely not done.
Sure.
Yeah, we've got exciting things in development today.
So walk me through there. Well, there's two things. You have the digital version, and then you also have hard copies of each stage of these projects as well. We were looking at earlier. So, I mean, you can have the digital, and the hard copies also have the QR codes that you can scan and somebody can take a look at and walk through. Yeah,
you bet. So from that position, you might be referencing the client approval package, and that is a very robust. Here's a sample set, right? Yeah. So our client approval package is roughly 80 pages. And this documents and memorializes, Dave, anything that you could possibly question through the design process. Is an elevation is produced for that. Your materials are defined. Your schedules are developed. And so,
sorry, my reach.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just love
by
this.
All means. So as an example, within these kitchens, right, your cabinets are defined. The manufacturer is defined. Your plumbing fixtures are defined. And so there's never a question. Your cabinet schedule is developed so that everything that's going to need to be taken into Sprint 2.0 with the manufacturer is already done.
I love it. Like I was holding this up while you were showing what's there. I mean, that literally shows them what's there and what's going on with it. All right, so let's talk. How does somebody? There's some questions, as you saw, get started in regards to, well, if I wanted to use this for remodeling a bathroom, right? That's in its simplest form. But for a manufacturer or somebody that's looking to take their production, you know, their level, you know, to the next level.
Optimization.
Yeah. Optimization, correct. How do they get started? And, you know, what is the process of saying, all right, I like what Prefab Logic's doing. I want to take a closer look at this. What does one need to do so it doesn't feel so overwhelming? Because, you know, there were comments. There's a lot that goes into this, but you guys kind of did that heavy lifting, no?
Well, we've developed it to ensure that the industry can create efficiencies and optimize. But I would say first, to answer your questions, reach out, let's have a conversation. Right? Let's start beginning to create that understanding of what it takes to get this accomplished. Right. And we can go from there.
I love it. I love it. Doug, I love this. Let's go back and see what's going on in the Oh my goodness. Look at all this stuff in here. All right. So listen, Doug, if people have, let me see, we got Henry. So you got some people in the office here responding to Henry, because Henry had a question too. Let me just put up here. He's nerding out. He said, apologies, I'm nerding out on the LOD 500. Has Navisworks ever missed a clash detection? Ain't no shame in it, he says.
So to answer your question, Navisworks will only miss a clash detection if we fail in our job in our integration.
Right. Yeah. And you were kind of saying earlier, you know, there's good, there's bad with all of this, but it's garbage in, garbage out. Yep. So if the data going in is accurate, and then have you put systems in place to control that accuracy of the data?
That's part of that design review and collaboration process. Yes.
Got it. Got it. So, I mean, there's a whole team working behind you guys to support all of these manufacturers that are out there. So their burden is not the data. Their burden is working with you guys on pulling this together.
Yeah, I mean, our approach to this is manufacturers do something really well, and that's build product. They just need to be given the tools and resources to be successful.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right, we got Andrew Seeley joining us today. So we can't ever get enough of this topic. Great to see a fresh look at what the team is doing there. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I don't know, man. What do you want to leave us with here? I mean, all of a sudden, we're finally seeing in our industry what our industry has needed for so long. And those are the tools to not be in last place in this industry. I'm tired of being in last place, Doug, and this starts moving us out of last place. This starts pushing us closer. I always say Tesla should be charging our buildings. Our buildings should not be charging Teslas. Are we getting closer?
We're stepping in that direction, Dave.
Yeah.
And I would say if there was something that it was important to leave this group with is innovation, collaboration, technology creation and development is something that we have done poorly at for a very long time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so as an industry, this can't just be Prefab Logic's lift. As an industry, we have to embrace change. We have to embrace innovation. I mentioned that Justin and Andy were from Synergy Construction, were here last week. You spent time with some other general contractors out of Southern California, some large scale construction management companies, and they're salivating for this because they know this isn't the silver bullet to solve every problem within the construction industry. Right. It's just not, right? But what it does is it takes a big bite out of the need to create efficiencies and optimization. That's really all this does, guys. And my request to the industry is get on board, help create, help innovate, help drive optimization, reduce time, compress budgets so that we can see the scale.
For sure. I mean, I've been on so many projects over the last few months, especially during the whole COVID being out and about, and no change orders on projects of the scale you were just showing us. The COVID project we did in Long Island for the hospital. I mean, that saves hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to the developer or the investment bank or whoever's project it is. But it also saves money all the way through the supply chain with the optimization. More efficiency the whole way through. And I think this is what everybody has to understand. There's an upfront cost to technology and, pulling all this stuff together, but the savings are massive.
To that point, I'll reference kind of the first full-scale project that this methodology was applied to. It was a 160 module project that from the time that it went online, a couple of things were notable for that project. Not one application was applied out of station. Not one module was ever constructed offline.
Right.
When the play button was pressed to go into manufacturing, it was all but seamless. That's never happened in the history of our industry.
When you say one module wasn't finished offline, you're talking about the doors weren't there because they didn't order enough and it sat in the yard and they had to go back out and send their whole crew?
Or yes, that.
Right? That happens all the time.
It was designed improperly,
right,
and they had to build it and tear it apart and rebuild it again.
Yeah.
And they were makeshifting online just to ensure that they could go through a line roll. That didn't happen.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, so here we go, Doug. I'm going to ask you, what is your one thing? What is your one thing? Tell us right now. Use this right here.
Our one thing is continued optimization and efficiency creation for our industry, folks. If we can't get there 5 years from now, we're going to be in the same position then that we are today, and that is resting at that 3, maybe 3.5% of starts annually. It's not acceptable. We have a resource, we have an asset in manufacturing that can optimize if we give them the tools and the resources to be successful. We've now developed, created the technology to be able to do that on site with our general contractors. Get on board. Let's create together.
I love it. I love it. You're absolutely right. Tired of being in last place. You heard it from Doug Pill, Prefab Logic. We will not be in last place anymore. It makes no sense. Everybody needs a house. Everybody's living hopefully in shelters of some sort in homes. We need more of them out there. We need to make it more affordable. We need to make them healthier. And we can do that by being more efficient. We can do that with processes and build smarter. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Can't disagree a word with it, my friend.
I love it. I love it. All right, everybody, that's it. So my name is Dave Cooper. This was an expert interview. We are in Nampa, Idaho at Prefab Logic. I am Dave Cooper. Please hit that like and share button one last time. And if you're not following this guy right here, Wicked Smart, as they say up in Boston, please follow him. We'll see you on Wednesday. Bye. Oh, we got Boxable on Wednesday.
Fantastic.
You're going to have to check out Boxable. So yeah, join us Wednesday for Boxable. It's going to be a great show, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And I'll just have to figure out what time zone I'm in before I say where I'll be. Bye now.